War has been with humankind since before the advent of writing, perhaps articulated in cave paintings of our ancestors. But our oral histories were the true beginnings of war stories, laid down in epic poems that elevated those who fought. These gave way to the observation of historians, journals of those who fought, commanded, and finally to fiction talking about wars real and imagined. Such fiction is controversial. It often touches on the worst prejudice and excess of humankind as much as it exalts the virtues of courage and sacrifice. How do we tell stories about the most controversial of all humankind's endeavors? Our panelists will tackle these questions. This week, the indefatigable C.L. Cannon brings us books you may like if you are a fan of Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. You won't want to miss our list of upcoming shows on this week's Go Indie Minute, when we will bid farewell to March of the Writers for 2025. Finally, we challenge our panelists with some multiple choice fun in our epilogue. So gather around and listen to the ghosts of future and past speak of suffering and glory. It's time for another episode of This Week in Indies with your host, SM Hillman. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of This Week in Indies. I'm your host, SM Hillman. Today, we're going to talk about war stories, which can be humorous, they can be tragic, they can be uplifting, all the things that you find in other works of fiction as well. But we're going to talk specifically about war stories today and how we write them and the impact they can have on readers. So enough about me. Let's go ahead and meet our selection of fine panelists today. And we're going to go ahead and start with Daniel.
Hi, I'm Dan Myers, author of Polyandre Rising and Attack on Foresight, books 1 and 2 of the Knight's Trials series.
Thank you, Daniel. And then we're going to go ahead with Brad. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, I'm Brad Anderson. I'm the author of Duo Tarot, and my recent release is Ashme Song, just out a couple months now.
Thank you, Brad. And next up is Jan.
Hello, my name is Jan Kotoč. I am an author of the Central Imperium series, which is out in English. It's a space military science fiction. And in my native Czech, I am also an author of an alternate history series called The Czech Lands and the Hirano Sector military sci-fi, which is one of those which we have the wonderful cover art here.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us. And last but not least, Bjorn.
Hey, Bjorn Leeson. I'm the author of the Outside the Thalspar series with four installments out so far. There's probably there's definitely 3, maybe 4 more coming. But it's been a pleasure writing them, and I hope everyone else likes them.
Thanks. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Oh, something happened.
Musical chairs.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, really. Okay.
It's like a card game.
It is like a card game. It's like Magic the Gathering. All right, Daniel, lead us off. Why are war stories important?
Well, I think if you look back in history, a lot of advancements were made in war, and a lot of cultural changes were made as a result of wars. And it's a way, I think, to add tension and an obstacle that everybody can understand, and most people anyway, can relate to all over the world. It's universal. So I think they're important to write so people don't forget the horrors of it, and they're important as far as writers, is because you can explore a lot of issues as a result. So that'd be my short answer.
Awesome. Do you think that they I don't know what that. Do you think that they resonate with audiences or certain kind of audiences because of
well, personal experiences, of course, but also why do you think they resonate with people who've never been in a war? Might be the question I have.
I think because the universal traits of courage and perseverance and duty and just doing things that you really don't want to do. I mean, nobody wants to do it, unless you're a psychopath. But but there are people that do that, and I think everybody in their everyday lives has something they really don't want to do. Potentially getting up and going to work every day, maybe at a job they hate. But just those characteristics of doing it anyway. And again, like I said, the bravery, courage, loyalty, the bonds you make with the people, all of those are universal themes. And I think they can just be brought out easily in a battle or war setting.
Thank you. Brad, what about you? Why are war stories important?
Let's see, that's a fun question. Important for, I think, a lot of reasons. One is I would like to think that most of us don't want to go to war, and but it's kind of weird. Like if you ask anybody, I don't think anybody wants to go to war, yet we do it all the time. And I think that's interesting to explore why that is. How does that happen? How is it that we get societies to do this thing that really nobody really necessarily wants to do? Like there's some aspect of human nature going on in there that I think is worth exploring. It's interesting to explore. I think sometimes people forget the cost of war, and stories can help people remember that. And then also I think like you can tell any kind of human story in a war. So like any I don't know, like you have stories of bravery, stories of cowardice, stories of duty, stories of shirking your duty, stories of like romance. Almost any kind of human story can be told in a war story, because I think war encompasses like all aspects of like when you're in it, like it encompasses all aspects of human life. You can see everything in it. It's like this microcosm of everything that we are. The best of us and the worst of us all at once. And I think you can write some powerful stories with that. There's some powerful stories, some powerful messages and lessons that you can pull out of those experiences.
I would agree. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Jan, what about you? What do you think?
Well,
Why are war stories important?
First off, I agree with Dan and Brad. It's 100%, I would say. Also, it's like the human story, and I think it's when you write a war story, it's often there's this cliche that military science fiction or military fiction in general has just action and no characters. And my experience being that it's almost the opposite. Like, the characters tend to be very realistic when someone is actually shooting at them. And often people imagine themselves in similar situations, and in the end, the novel or the story needs to be about people, and people in specific situations that are maybe not of their doing and maybe not of their desire, but that's the hand they've been dealt with. And I've always been interested in military history and other military science fiction, but mostly military history. And so when I started writing many years ago, it's been like natural inclination to me. But then 3 years ago, it's become a little more realistic for me, because as you may have figured out, I live like 500 miles from Ukraine, and I have refugees from Ukraine in this house for the past 30 years.
So it's not just theoretical for you. It's
not
a real
theoretical
thing.
Anyway, yeah. I have of course friends who are soldiers, and some of them are like even volunteers over there, and they read my books. So that's like, yes, and it's like more realistic for me.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I think that is something important too. A lot of war stories do touch on real life, right? Or real situations, even if they're fictionalized. So I think that's important to remember. Thank you. Bjorn, what about you? Why are war stories important?
I agree with everything everyone said. I think it kind of depends on what type of war we're talking about too. Like we seem to be heading towards more automated, faceless, nameless enemy type warfare. You know, where the hands-on is not there anymore, and that's kind of sad because it's going to become where life means less and less because you don't actually see the person you're fighting anymore. So to me, the stories we write, which I assume all of us here probably write more, probably more traditional type warfare where you're face to face with the enemy, that it helps affirm the meaning of life. I mean, if I've never been in war myself, but I've had family that has and heard the stories. You have a whole different perspective when you're on the battlefield. And I think writing the story, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, I think it's very important that we keep that going as a reminder of humanity. I mean, where are we heading in the future? We don't really know. It seems our violent tendencies get worse for some reason instead of better. But yeah, it's a reaffirmation of life. Well, the importance of life, the sacredness of life, and I think that's one of the most important aspects of writing war stories from my point of view.
You know, and you actually touched on something which was going to be sort of the next question, but I want to jump into it now. You mentioned how war is becoming less personal. Does that how does that change how you might write? So, like if you were to say write a story about something 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, how has that changed to that sort of drone versus drone combat? How like that changed how you write a war story?
For me, I wouldn't, because I write traditional warfare. I don't write modern. I don't like writing for modern technology. That's so I stick with the Norse era, World War II, you know, those sorts of things.
No, understood.
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer.
Well, maybe take a look at it like from this point of view. What if do you think still in a technological age, the traditional stories that you write are going to still be relevant? I mean, we hope so as writers, but
right. No, I think it will. I think it'll be a reminder. That's what I hope anyway. It would be a reminder.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. What about you? How does the changing technology, I guess, or the changing face of war, or does war change, the face change even with the tech? How does that affect your writing going forward?
Well, I agree that it definitely changes the technology. When I write like science fiction, deep space warfare, like I do in my Central Imperium series, lots of it is automated. Of course, I still have like spaceships that are like crewed by humans, and you just need like 500 of them and not 5,000 of them like on a modern aircraft carrier. So there's like the automation is like you still need human factor in there, and of course you have like robots or androids that can also fight, but that's also slightly different. But I think some of the emotional aspects are the same. Like everyone will tell you that, you know, no matter if it's ancient Rome or modern warfare, like the soldiers, when they are actually in the field, they're fighting for each other. You know, they are fighting to protect their bodies. And I think that's always going to be there. That's always going to be present. And, you know, I'm writing deep space warfare, but I'm also right now, my current work in progress is 19th century warfare. So suddenly I have muzzle loading muskets. And I feel some factors are still the same, but I have lot more work to do with studying up on tactics, because that's not something that most people would understand, and I need to write it in a way that the reader would understand.
Right. Yeah, it is different. It's a different kind of war. You know, pushing a button to blow up a tank versus 100 or 200 people walking straight into another 100, 200 people all armed with the same kind of weapon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little bit different, for sure. Brad, what about you? How do you think the change in technology will affect writing in general?
Yeah, and so I write science fiction, so I do have to deal with that when I write stories. So yeah, I mean, part of writing war stories, when if you write science fiction, is trying to extrapolate what's going to happen and how do you write a compelling human story moving forward. And I think in my most recent book, Ashme Song, I think explores that a little bit. Because the ultimate goal of war is to kill people and destroy infrastructure on the other side. So even though a lot of it is automated, there's still a human victim at the end. And so what I did in Ashme's song, the story is a lot about that. It's people that want to get involved in the fight, but they're also the victims of the fight. And so I think that there is still a human story to tell in there, and maybe even more of a human story to tell in there when people are facing just like mindless drones. There were themes of, just soldiers sitting around a monitor, pressing buttons and not really feeling the impact of what they've done. I think stories probably become even more important in that world because they remind people of the human, like it's easy when it's all just automated and it's a press of a button, it's easy to forget the human cost. And I think stories can help us remember that human cost. I almost feel like stories will become more important in that stories should, in a decent world, stories would become even more important as warfare became more automated, just to help us remember that there is a human cost to it. And we can tell that human cost and have people feel that human cost. To again, just remember what the price of war is. So I think that's I know that's kind of how I'm taking the writing, because writing a story of just two robots fighting each other isn't very compelling. Just two software systems fighting each other isn't very compelling. I think you still need to have that human element in, and I think that's the way, at least in science fiction, that can move forward.
So indulge here for just a second. One of the things people love are fighters, single man fighters shooting each other in space, which is impractical as hell. But so how do you handle that particular subject, if you do, in your work?
I know, right? Yeah, like when you look at the actual physics of like science, like big space army battles, it's like you fire a rocket and then you wait 3 months, right? It's like not very engaging. I've seen a couple of different ways that different science fiction authors have taken. Some of them have leaned into like the actual like hard science fiction. Like they're like, yeah, they fire a rocket and you wait 5 months while it chases the other ship down, and they'll write stories like that. Other authors, and I've done this with some stories as well, where you just kind of you just sort of invent a new technology where you can still kind of have those little personal fighter ships that still kind of make sense in that environment there. And then and then you also see others like where you mechanize humans. That's how you also see off some stories like Warhammer 40K, like they're just like humans are mechanized and they have power armor and they're basically tanks themselves, right? Sort of this human machine interface. You see some science fiction authors kind of take it like that. So yeah, that's always the challenge, right? Like how do you keep the human, like how do you, like people want to read stories about people, right? And how do you keep people in the stories when technology kind of takes over? And yeah, those are the ways that I've seen it. So some lean into the hard science and they're just like, yeah, we're just going to write it out how we think it would actually go. Some kind of just sort of hand wave it away. Others kind of, they lean into it the other way, like humans merge with machines or humans become mechanized, like humans become the mechanized war machines. You'll see, those are the ways that I've seen it. I prefer to kind of tell, I prefer to tell the human stories of like small, just small people, like not big heroes and stuff like that. Just the people that are, trying to get by. So I always sort of focus on those types of people, I guess. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Daniel, what about you? What effect do you think the emerging technology will have on writing more stories going forward?
Not a lot, actually. I think of shows that I've watched with, war shows or whatever, and as we've all said, you're writing a story about people's interactions and the effects of the environment, the effects of war or whatever. So kind of in a way, the war, the battle, all of that kind of stuff is mainly a prop. It's not the story. So you're going to change. You're going to be writing. They use lasers or they're fighting automatons, but that's not what the story. Hopefully, that's not what the story is about. The story is going to be about the people, how they're reacting, their relationships. You've got to build people that you like or the readers like. And I think of the book I, Robot, where I mean, yeah, it was a robot, but you kind of got attached emotionally to that robot by the end, even though it was just a robot, artificial intelligence. So I don't think you're going to change a lot. I'm not going to change a lot of my writing. It'll just be the background in which it takes will change.
And I mean, we've seen in the past artificial life as main characters, secondary characters, or as all the characters, if you want, Ian Banks, shifts in the culture. But do you think that with the current feelings about AI, that they will become more important in our stories in general going forward, but also more stories? How we interact with the AI?
Yeah, I think that AI powered weapon systems, and you think the Terminator series, I do anyway, almost immediately. I think more and more of the futuristic books are going to start including that pretty heavily. And I mean, I've seen some of it already, but we'll just see more and more. And as people understand more of what AI can do and how it works, we'll get to see stories of it breaking down and, stories of it doing amazing things. And I look forward to reading those because I love science fiction and fantasy. So.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, definitely look forward to how people are going to have AI characters in their stories for sure. All right, let's go ahead and take a few look at some of our comments from Going Now himself. Send a star. Yes, we love stars. AF Stewart says hi. Hi, AF. Thank you for being here as always.
Hi, AF.
And Lost, the most effective human cause of war and storytelling. Yep, absolutely. We agreed with that, Joe. All right, so I'm going to throw this question out to everybody and anyone. Where do you begin when writing a story that's going to be containing war as either a framing device or in some other way? Where do you begin as a writer?
My story.
Okay, I'm a world builder, so if I'm writing a new series or a new book, I'm like developing like props to the world, like how the technology works. And I have two space warfare series, and the technology is different in both. And so when I did the Hirano series, which is the picture next to me, that I had like space aircraft carriers, more like in Battlestar Galactica kind of vibe. And in science fiction, if you have sort of like fighter jets equivalents in space, the only thing they would be practical would be if one starfighter can destroy a big capital ship. Otherwise, they are useless. So we need to develop it like that. And then in another series, Central Imperium, I went totally different direction because I wanted something else. So I created the sublight drive, which sort of creates like this gravity repulsor field. So you cannot use missiles, you cannot use starfighters because it will just bounce off. So we go back to energy combat, like you have beam weapons that you need to use. But otherwise, I'm crazy. So every time when I open like my notebooks, like the first thing I start writing are ship names. I'm a sucker for ship names. I love my ship names. I need to name all my ships.
Yeah,
It's like the
I understand
part
that
of
for
writing.
sure. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Well, anyone else? Where do you all start your when you're writing a war story? Where do you start?
For me, my stories are very character driven, very character focused. So it depends on where they are and what kind of person they are is how I approach the war that they're fixing to enter into. You know what their role is going to be in it, and yeah, so that's how I go. I just start with the character to see where the character takes me, but it usually ends up a war of some kind, whether it's very old or not so old. It's a war of some kind, and the character takes me there. I just follow the character.
Okay.
And then for me, for better for worse, I generally just write standalone novels these days. So for me, when I'm writing a story, there's a theme or an idea that I want to explore in the story, and then like Jan, I have to build the world. I like the world, so I have this theme, I have this idea, and then I need to build a world that allows me to explore that. And yeah, I say what you want about my psyche, but yeah, usually it involves some kind of major human maybe it's normal. It always involves like a major human you need that conflict to be able to bring out whatever theme or idea that you want to explore. So for me, yeah, it starts with whatever cockamamie idea I have in my head of what story I want to tell. And then I'm like, okay, I need to create something so that I can tell this, and everything kind of flows from there.
Brad, I think the real monstrous behavior is only writing single books and not series, right? I mean,
I know. Who's the real bad guy here? Sorry,
right.
guy. Yeah.
Daniel, any thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking, based on what Brad said, is so depending on what kind of war or environment you have, I mean, the world building is super important. And I just go back to history. There really hasn't been a very long period in American history that there hasn't been a war going on somewhere. We have breaks 10, 15, 20 years sometimes, but there seems to be conflict all the time, everywhere. And so when I'm world building, I try to think of that. And so again, going to technology and stuff like that is, how did people develop as a result? Now, I have a very magic-based world. So like, people aren't building siege engines, and their castle design is a little different. But in my third book, I'm bringing into some people who don't have magic at all. And so they've actually developed better weapons and different tactics based on the fact that they can't cast spells to kill people. So again, taking that into account, and building the history of what warfare has done to the world that I'm building. The current one references something that happened 1,200 years in the past. So it's kind of fun that's kind of on everybody's mind there. And yet they've still had a lot of wars throughout, the centuries. And it polarizes people, or that might not be the word, but when you fight a war against somebody, it's like you don't like them very much anymore. And you get those kind of old hatreds that keep boiling up, even though you might not have had any conflict with them for hundreds of years, and you still got people that just kind of have that collective mindset of, they're bad, and the prejudices and the stuff that go along with that.
Humanity has a long memory, doesn't it?
It does.
I'm an Orioles fan, and I'll never be a Yankees fan, no matter what. No matter how bad the Yankees are, I will never be a Yankees. I'll never feel bad for them.
We have a long memory about the wrong thing, it seems. We hold a grudge for a long time.
We have a long way to go.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. All right. So let's take a break from our discussion, and let's hear from CL Cannon for this week's Indie Connection.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. And today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. The first book I have for you is called Shelley, the Android Detective by Doug Brody. Humans have 4 motives for murder: passion, panic, prejudice, and greed. Machines have only one: purpose. Meet Shelley, a synthetic investigator that hunts defective and often dangerous machines. In its years of service to Homeland Security, Shelley has never questioned its purpose, never doubted its mission, and never failed in its task, until now. Partnered with young analyst Jake August, Shelley finds itself wading into deep political waters after a U.S. senator is brutally murdered, presumably by a synthetic. In their search for answers, Shelley and Jake race across America from Washington, D.C.'s halls of power to the vast, frigid plains of Alaska. But every clue they discover only creates more troubling questions, because what they are hunting is neither human nor machine. It is something far more dangerous: the next evolution. The second book I have for you is called Vault's Promise by Cameron Corll. In a world ravaged by an AI uprising, hope lies buried deep underground. Sarah has spent a decade in an underground vault, safe from the chaos above. But as supplies dwindle, she must confront her deepest fear: venturing into the unknown world. 13-year-old Wally has never gone outside her sanctuary's protective walls, thanks to her overprotective robot father. When a deadly outbreak threatens her community, she discovers a map to a hidden vault rumored to contain a life-saving vaccine. VacuBot, once a simple cleaning robot, is now a combat-ready drone who searches for purpose in a world that fears AI. An evolving consciousness becomes both an asset and a challenge on a high-stakes mission. This unlikely trio must navigate a treacherous landscape where nature has reclaimed civilization and scavengers roam. With time running out for the sick, they race to unlock the vault's secrets. The third book I have for you is called Erasing Emily by Francis Malka. A robotics engineer working at Artificial Life is given a simple yet unsettling mission: track down and erase Emily, a rogue unit that violated the first law of robotics. But when Emily finds him first, seeking his help instead of hiding, he is faced with an impossible choice. He can protect Emily, uncover the truth behind its evolution, and risk everything to challenge the laws that govern machines. Or he can report it, safeguard his career, and help Artificial Life contain a scandal that could redefine the future of AI, at the cost of Emily's existence. But as the story unfolds, one thing becomes clear: this isn't just about man versus machine. It's about something far more familiar. And the last book I have for you is called Made to Order: Robots and Revolution by a collection of authors. 100 years after Carol Caput coined the word, robots are an everyday idea, and the inspiration for countless stories in books, film, TV, and games. They are often among the least privileged, most unfairly used of us, and the more robots are like humans, the more interesting they become. This collection of stories is where robots stand in for us, where both we and they are disadvantaged, and where hope and optimism shines through. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Thank you, CL, as always, for doing the Indie Connection for us. We really appreciate it. So you're talking to, we often ask a question for the new writer, someone who's just coming into writing. Maybe they're new to war stories. This is something that they hadn't tackled previously but want to tackle. Do you have a piece of advice, something that you would say to a new author who's tackling the subject to help them where to begin or to get on the right track? And anybody, feel free to
Research,
definitely, and ask people. It's about the human element, and so the best ways to avoid cliches is to ask people, and we all know some people, even if we haven't served ourselves, we know people who did. So ask.
I would throw out there too, just run the whole gamut of emotions, because war captures all of it. We've all kind of said that already in our own different ways, different wording, but pride, love for your comrade next to you, it runs the gamut, everything. So that's very important, I think, to put in your stories, to make sure it runs the whole spread of human emotion.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important, right? To humanize your characters, even if they are AI or robots or whatever, to make them relatable to people who are reading. Because I think a lot of people are turned off. Well, no, some are turned off, but are intimidated by the idea that this isn't something that a war story isn't something that they could read, right? It wouldn't be interesting to them, when in fact they're often the most human of stories in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a love story in the middle of a war story,
Definitely.
and that's somebody hit on some. So there's a couple people that I've friended online that are military guys, and I spent 6.5 years in the military, but by no means am I an expert on anything. So I reach out and talk and run things past them. And, most people are really open to helping out and giving you suggestions or advice. And the ones that aren't usually just ghost you, you just don't hear anything back. So, I mean, that's fine too. I've not yet had somebody that was like, you're stupid, or quit bothering me, kid, or anything else like that. So most of them give you probably more information than you want.
Yeah,
that I've run across.
I have the same experience, and in one of my books that's being translated into English right now, I have like a contemporary Czech Republic and aliens attack or something like that, and so I had lots of advisors from the Czech army, from sergeant to brigadier general, and I heard all kinds of stories, probably more than I ever wanted to know, but it was very interesting. And I'm everything that's in the book is like real thing that was true at the time of me writing that, apart from the aliens.
I always feel like authors must be like, I think all authors must be on must be flagged with security agencies based on our search terms. And how do you blow up a city?
No doubt.
Like what list am I
How
on
much
now?
C4 do you need to bring down?
Yeah, exactly. Who's knocking on my door at 3 a.m.?
I got a question. I want all y'all to be honest. Have you erased your browser history after you've looked at these?
I don't think you can erase it. I know, right?
I actually periodically erase my browser.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. I find one of the things that it's something I struggled with, and so that would be my advice to a new writer. Action scenes look great in movies and TV, and they don't translate well to the written word, right? Like a 30-second amazing action scene would take you like 10 pages to type it out, and it just drags. And so I think when you're writing, like I think a lot of people, when they want to write war stories, they're like, it's going to be like an action novel, and I've got to sort of write all the fights. But yeah, writing a fight, just the fight itself, isn't, like I say, it doesn't translate to the written word. It's that human element. So you kind of have to shift your focus. Let's say movies, TV is a visual medium, and so it's a different type of storytelling than when you're writing. Writing is a thinking medium. There's an imagination medium. And so it's you need to focus on different aspects, I think, of the action to make it a compelling story. So that would be my advice, as well as doing all your research. I find I read a ton of like nonfiction about like history, about wars, and like look for nonfiction where They focus a lot on like the soldiers' writings, like diaries and stuff like that. Like there's lots of nonfiction in history that sort of pulls from the diaries of soldiers in World War I and World War II and all this and that and stuff like that. Kind of gives you that the human feel, like what do they feel as they go through this, which I think kind of helps you figure out what is the heart, what is the action that I can portray in the written word. So.
Yeah, I find James Holland's books particularly good for that. His various books he's written on World War II, because he'll often take from the diaries of like German or Italian soldiers as well. So you'll get both sides of a particular conflict and some of the thinking behind that. So yeah, I think that's great advice in general. Do you have, and this, this might be tricky, but was there a particular conflict or a particular story about conflict that inspired you to write your war stories?
I wouldn't say it inspired me to write my stories, but I pull a lot of stuff from books like Washing of the Spears, talking about the Zulu conflict, and it encompasses centuries down in South Africa. And, just because I find that fascinating. And I've read books on other battles to kind of influence how I write battles. But yeah, I wouldn't say I've been inspired to write the story, but I've definitely wrote some of my races and tactics and their stuff based on books, historic books.
I won't say that I'm kind of similar. I didn't set out to write the story based on that, but what I did early on when I was formulating the protagonist of my series, who's Mariel, she's a female Viking warrior from the 800s. But in my mind, somewhere in the construction of laying the story out, I decided, what would it look like if you dropped a female Viking warrior in World War II? Not something normal people think of, but that started the path to mix the two warfares. I mean, you have World War II and you have Viking era. Those are two very, very different styles of fighting. And part of the fun of writing a story, and I hope part of the fun of the reader, is to see how this Viking warrior deals with the change. You've skipped 1,000 years in the future and you're still expected to fight for the salvation of the world. How does this look? And that was a fun challenge. I mean, I don't know that necessarily answers your question, but I thought it related to that.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of different challenges right there that I can imagine writing a story would present.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It was a blast. I'm still writing it, so it's still fun.
Right? Yeah, I love it. There's I can't think of any one book that inspired me to do that. Growing up, I read a lot of fantasy, and a lot of fantasy, especially around that time, it always seems to climax in like a big war of the good guy versus the bad guy. So that was, I guess, in a lot of the reading that I read. Same with the sci-fi. The sci-fi that I was reading growing up tended to be kind of the military sci-fi. So yeah, no one's story in general, but that just seemed, the stories that I read seemed to have those types of conflicts in it in some way, shape, or form.
I think I was always like a military history buff, and especially World War II buff, especially in my formative years. So that influenced my writing definitely. And my alternative history is hugely inspired by World War II, and even my sci-fi, I have naval battles that are kind of inspired by that. And on a fiction side, I always loved David Weber's Honor Harrington series, to which I've also had a fortune of contributing in the last anthology. So nice. It's like Napoleonic Wars in space. It's more complex than that, but the original ship design was similar to broadsides. Then of course the technology changes, and that's pretty neat thing in that series, and that's something that many authors of military SF forget to do, that if you have a war that lasts for decades, technology changes, because just look at how technology changes in World War II in a few years. So if you wage a long war, even in science fiction environment, technology will improve and change. So I think that's important thing to remember, and I try to remember even if I write now with muzzle loading muskets. So.
Yeah, I will say though that Tolkien's Battle of Five Armies, that had a huge impact as far as wanting me to write something.
Definitely.
And I love David Weber too. I got to meet him at a convention years ago, but great books, great. He does a really good job of extrapolating, basically naval combat into space.
Although I teased a friend of mine who's a big fan of the Honor Harrington series. It was just a few books in, but I could sort of like see the parallels to Nelson. I'm like, right? She eventually at the end she's going to die, right? And the person was like, no. I'm like, yes.
I'm not going to say anything, but there are interviews with David Weber online when you can learn what is Eric Flint excuse, and complain how Eric Flint screwed up his plans to actually. Well, I will not say anything more for people who haven't read the series, but yeah, there's one event in the series where David had to change his plans, and he blames that on the late Eric Flint. But he and Eric Flint were friends for several decades.
Yeah. Eric had a big influence on a lot of writers, especially a lot of the Bane writers. So rest in peace, Eric Flint. Okay, thank you all so much for today. We're not quite done yet, but I wanted to thank you, and this won't be the last time, for helping and participating in today's panel. So let's go ahead and jump into our what's happening this week in Indies. Yay! So everyone, this week we have a couple shows coming up this week for our Go Indie Minute. We have Monday at 8. We have Let me try that again. Spotlight on Above the Rain collection will be out. If it kills Joe, he swears it'll be out. On Tuesday at 8, we have Juliet Rose is live with First Time for Everything with J.E. Pittman. Thank you, J.E., for being on the show. And obviously, Jane, thank you, Juliet, for doing Go Indie Now stuff. Thursday at 8, we have Page Numbers with Bob Magoo. Thank you, Bob. And Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, since it's beginning of a new month, we have Late Night News with Joe Compton and Vanessa Junta. If you watch Go Indie Now, you should be familiar. Well, you should be familiar with Joe, for sure. But also Vanessa as well. And our very own J.D. Estrada, if folks know that he does March of the Writers, and we're saying goodbye to March of the Writers. We appreciate the fact that J.D. shares that with us. The last couple of days are today, the 30th, and tomorrow, the 31st, will be the last day. So check out on Instagram and other places where you might find JD and the March of the Writers. And hopefully, if you participated even a little, it was a good experience for you. All right, so now comes the time for Epilogue. So in our Epilogue, we're going to play a game where I ask some multiple choice questions. And the person who is the last one eliminated, so if you get it wrong, you get eliminated. The last person eliminated gets to say, it's always time to go indie now once we're done. Yeah, is everyone, here we go. Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready.
All right.
Righty.
Danielle, you'll answer first, and we'll go to Brad, then Jan, then Bjorn, and then the second question will go in reverse. So for the first question, which of these is not an actual war? The football war, the War of Jenkins' Ear, the War of the Tennis Match, or the Pastry War? Daniel?
I'm going to go A. I have no idea.
So which one did you choose? First one?
Yeah, the first one, football war.
Football war.
I suspect the answer is B, but I'm going to go with A.
Okay. Brad?
I know they all sound like they could be fake. I'm going to go with the pastry war. Was that D?
So 4, yeah, D. Yep.
Yep, D. Yeah, 4. Yeah.
Jan?
I'm going to go with C, the tennis war, was it? Or
Yes, War of the Tennis Match.
War of the tennis match. I'm going to go with C. Yeah.
Okay. Bjorn?
I'm gonna go with B.
D is in David?
No, B. B as in Bjorn.
B. Okay. B is in Bjorn. Okay. So the actual answer is C, the War of the Tennis Match. There have been battles of tennis matches, or tennis courts and things like that, but the War of the tennis match, there wasn't one that I could find. I mean, I Googled. And during that, Google was like, "We'd like to know where you are, sir." And I was like, "No."
It's giving me your neighbor's house.
So
Google would like your location.
right. So Jan, you win, but let's go. I'll go ahead and ask the second question anyway, just for fun. Which of these is not an actual war movie? 71. That's the name of the movie. War of the Roses. Ron, and Casablanca. Which one of those is not an actual war? Bjorn? Or a war movie, excuse me, Bjorn?
I have no clue. I'm gonna have to guess B.
Okay. War of the Roses. Yep.
It worked well for me last time.
Jan, which one do you think?
What was C again? Ron or Rob or
Ron or Ran. It's spelled in English Ran, but it's Japanese. It's a Kurosawa film.
Oh. Yeah, I've already said C, so I will go C again. So yeah.
Okay. Brad?
And which one was the first one?
The first one is called 71.
I'm going to go for 71. I don't think so. I'm going to go for 71. A.
Okay. So Daniel?
I'm going to go with A as well, because are we saying they're not movies or they're not war movies?
Not war movies.
Oh, then I'm sorry. Then I'm going to go with War of the Roses.
Okay, that is correct. War of the Roses is a movie about a divorcing couple with Mike Douglas and Kathleen Turner, and and Danny DeVito is their lawyer. So, all right. So once we're done, Jan, you're gonna send us out with It's Always Time to Go Indie Now. But before we get to there, if everyone, Bjorn, we're gonna start with you. Tell folks where they can find you on the web.
The best place to go is my website. It's thalspar.com, THALSPARR.com, and that'll take you to where you can buy the books, and it gives you more information about the books and little tidbits of stuff that's not in the book. So that's the best place to go.
Awesome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Go. Jan, where can they find you on the web?
Okay, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. If you just type my name, you will find me. And you can find my books on Amazon. You can find them through my website, which is again myname.cz. Or if you just type it into Google, you will find the website. And I also have a Patreon page where you can get lots of my older books and older short stories for some very small amount, which you can unsubscribe at any time. So, and that's also linked on the website and elsewhere.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us today and sharing.
I greatly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Brad?
You can find me at my website. It's bradanderson2000.com. I'm the 2000th one of me. So bradanderson2000.com. You can find all my books, all my info, that'll get you whatever you want to know. You can get it there.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Daniel? Go ahead.
Say it however you'd like. I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, X. My books can be found anywhere you buy books. I have a website, wyvernsairy.com. That is in the process of being moved down to Texas. So it may be down for a while. But yeah, I had a great time today. I love meeting you guys, and had a this a fun little show you got.
Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we do enjoy this show quite a bit. I want to thank our audience. If you would subscribe and like, we obviously appreciate it. If you're listening in the future, and I sure hope you will, you can also leave comments for our panelists. You can even say mean things about me. I'm good with that. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, panelists, for being here. Thanks, Joe, for having the show for us. And Jan, what time is it?
It's always time to go indie now.
Thanks, everybody.